There is a message pressing through the veil right now, and you are meant to receive it in this precise moment, at this precise hour, because the person who occupies the sacred space in your heart is experiencing something they have never felt before. A terror so profound it is dismantling every defense they ever constructed against vulnerability. They are panicking, and this panic is not the fleeting anxiety of a passing mood, but the soul-deep recognition that they are losing you, truly losing you, perhaps forever. And for the first time in the entire trajectory of your connection, they understand that your absence is not a temporary inconvenience, but a permanent alteration of their reality. You have shifted something within yourself, something fundamental and irreversible, and though you may not have announced this shift through words or grand declarations, they feel it in the energetic currents that bind you, in the sudden coldness where warmth once flowed freely, in the silence that now answers where your presence once responded without hesitation. This is not imagination. This is the soul's recognition of change, the psyche's alarm system activating because what was once guaranteed has become uncertain. And uncertainty, when it concerns matters of the heart, transforms even the most stoic individual into a desperate seeker of resolution. They are thinking of you obsessively in this window of time, replaying every moment they dismissed your value, every instance they chose pride over honesty, every opportunity they squandered because they believed, truly believed, that you would always be there, waiting, hoping, loving them despite their inability to reciprocate with equivalent depth. That belief is shattering now, fracturing into 1,000 razor-edged realizations, and each one cuts deeper than the last. Right, they feel it. In the comments, if this resonates with the truth your soul already knows, because your acknowledgement activates the energetic transmission that is trying to reach you through these words. You changed, and though the transformation occurred quietly, without fanfare or announcement, it registered in their consciousness like an earthquake registers on instruments designed to detect the slightest tremor beneath the Earth's surface. You stopped chasing, stopped initiating, stopped offering the emotional labor that once flowed from you as naturally as rivers flow toward the sea. And in that cessation, you created a vacuum that your person cannot ignore no matter how desperately they wish to continue their pattern of avoidance and emotional unavailability. Your silence is louder than your words ever were, more commanding than any plea for recognition, more powerful than every expression of love you ever offered when they were not ready to receive it with the reverence it deserved. What you withdrew was not simply attention or affection, but the energetic foundation upon which they had unconsciously built their sense of security, the invisible support system they never acknowledged because it was always present, always reliable, always there to catch them when they stumbled through their own confusion and fear. You were the constant they took for granted, the sure thing they assumed would never waver regardless of how they treated the gift of your devotion. And now that constancy has evaporated like morning mist under the harsh light of noon, leaving them standing in a landscape they no longer recognize, grasping for something that is no longer within reach. The energetic shift that occurred was not a decision you made with your conscious mind alone, but a recalibration that happened in the depths of your being, a fundamental realignment of your spiritual priorities that announced itself to the universe before it fully announced itself to you. And the universe, in its infinite wisdom, transmitted this information directly to the soul of the person who now finds themselves on the outside of what was once an open door. They cannot name what changed, cannot point to a specific moment or conversation that marked the turning point, but they know with absolute certainty that something essential has altered, that the connection they once controlled through their ambivalence and selective availability has shifted into a configuration where they no longer hold the power they assumed would always be theirs. They thought you would always be there, and this assumption was not born from arrogance alone, but from the pattern that had been established through countless cycles of their withdrawal and your steadfast presence, their uncertainty and your unwavering clarity, their hot and cold oscillations and your consistent warmth that never seemed to diminish regardless of how many times they tested its durability through neglect or distance. You were the constant in an equation they never bothered to solve because they believed the answer would always remain the same, the variable that never varied, the founder. Tian that required no maintenance because it seemed to possess some inexhaustible capacity for resilience and patience. But you are human, not infinite, and every soul reaches a point where self-preservation must take precedence over the preservation of a connection that extracts more than it returns, where the scales of reciprocity tip so far into imbalance that continuing to stand beneath their weight becomes an act of self-betrayal rather than an act of love. The shock they are experiencing now is the shock of confronting a reality they never allowed themselves to consider, that you could walk away, that your love, though profound, was not unconditional submission to their timeline and terms. That patience, when stretched beyond its natural limits, eventually snaps and cannot be mended with belated apologies or sudden displays of interest motivated by loss rather than genuine appreciation. You were the constant they took for granted, and as Carl Jung understood with piercing clarity, we meet ourselves time and again in 1,000 disguises on the path of life. And in losing you, they are meeting the part of themselves that sabotages what it most deeply desires, the shadow self that destroys connection rather than risk the vulnerability of genuine intimacy. This realization is not abstract or philosophical for them in this moment. It is visceral, immediate, a physical sensation of loss that grips them in unexpected moments, when they see something that reminds them of you, when they reach for their phone with the impulse to share something knowing you will no longer respond with the enthusiasm that once greeted their communications, when they lie awake in the hours between midnight and dawn and understand that they created this absence through their own choices, their own fear, their own inability to recognize treasure while it was still in their possession. Their thoughts have become a prison, and you are both the guard and the key, the source of their torment and the only conceivable relief, occupying every corner of their mental landscape with an intensity that borders on obsession, transforming ordinary moments into triggers that pull them back into memories they cannot escape no matter how desperately they try to distract themselves with work, with other people, with any activity that might provide temporary amnesia from the relentless awareness of what they have lost. They replay every conversation, every moment of connection, analyzing the exact point where they could have chosen differently, where they could have been brave instead of afraid, honest instead of evasive, present instead of distant. And these mental replays loop endlessly like a song stuck in the mind's machinery, repeating the same verses over and over until the words lose meaning, but the emotional resonance only intensifies. They compare everyone to you and everyone falls short, not because you are perfect. Perfection is an illusion the ego creates to avoid authentic relationship, but because you are the specific frequency their soul recognizes as home, the particular combination of qualities and essence that speaks directly to something deep within them that no one else can reach, no matter how attractive or available or uncomplicated those other connections might appear on the surface. Their attempts to move on are failing spectacularly, not for lack of effort, but because the heart does not operate on the timeline of convenience, because genuine connection cannot be replaced with something that merely resembles connection, because you carved a space within them that has your exact shape, and no one else fits there no matter how they try to force substitutes into a cavity that rejects anything that is not authentically you. No one feels like you, not in conversation, not in silence, not in the 1,000 small ways that connection manifests between two souls who have touched each other at depths that transcend the superficial transactions most people mistake for intimacy. They are haunted by your absence, pursued by the ghost of what they had and did not value until it was gone. Where your energy once filled them, there is now hollow, an emptiness that cannot be filled with distractions or new connections, or any of the strategies people employ when they are trying to outrun the consequences of their own emotional unavailability and fear-based decision-making. This void is not simply the absence of your presence, but the absence of everything your presence provided, the safety, the understanding, the reflection of their best self that you held up like a mirror even when they could not see it themselves. The energetic nourishment that flowed between you in the moments of genuine connection that they now realize were not commonplace occurrences, but rare gifts they treated as if they were abundant and easily replaced. The vacuum you left behind pulls at them constantly, creating a gravitational force that draws their attention back to you again and again, reminding them through the persistent ache of absence that what they lost was not replaceable, not replicable, not something they will stumble upon again if they simply wait long enough or search diligently enough through the landscape of available connections. They try to fill this space, with work, with entertainment, with other people who show interest, with any activity that might temporarily mask the emptiness. But everything they pour into this void drains away immediately because it is not shaped to hold anything except what was removed, not designed to be sustained by substitutes or approximations, but only by the genuine article, only by you. The collective unconscious understands what the individual mind resists, that certain connections are irreplaceable not because of destiny or fate, but because of the specific alchemy that occurs when two particular souls interact, the unique combination of energies that cannot be manufactured or replicated through conscious effort alone. They are learning this truth the hard way, through the persistent emptiness that follows them from morning to night, through the awareness that settles over them in quiet moments when all distractions cease. And they must confront the reality that they created this void themselves through choices that seemed safer than vulnerability, easier than honesty, more comfortable than the risk of genuine intimacy. Subscribe to this channel for weekly spiritual guidance that illuminates the hidden dynamics of soul connections and empowers you to walk your path with clarity and strength. If fear was not stopping them, if pride did not stand guard at the gates of their heart like a sentinel protecting a fortress that holds nothing of value inside its walls, if the terror of rejection and the weight of their own ego did not create such formidable barriers to truth-telling, these are the words that would pour from them in an unstoppable torrent of raw honesty. I was wrong, I was blind, I was afraid. I did not see what I had until it was gone. I took you for granted because I believed you would always be there waiting for me to become ready. I thought I had unlimited time to figure out my feelings without consequences. I did not understand that patience has limits and love without reciprocity eventually exhausts itself no matter how strong it begins. I am sorry, not the shallow apology offered to smooth over a minor offense, but the soul-deep remorse that comes from genuine recognition of harm caused, of opportunities squandered, of a precious gift treated carelessly. I need you, not in the desperate way that seeks to fill an internal emptiness with external validation, but in the way that one part of a whole needs its complement, in the way that a soul recognizes its mirror, and understands that this reflection is essential to its own evolution and becoming. Come back, please come back. I will be different. I will do better. I will give you what you deserved from the beginning if you will give me the chance I did not earn but desperately want nonetheless. But these confessions remain trapped inside them, unspoken and unexpressed, because the same fear that prevented them from valuing you properly when you were present now prevents them from reaching out in your absence. The same pride that made them believe they could have you on their terms without full commitment now whispers that reaching out would be humiliating, that vulnerability is weakness, that admitting need is surrendering power. They hesitate because they are still imprisoned by the ego's need to control outcomes, still trapped in the illusion that they can manage this situation without risking the full exposure of their heart, still hoping that somehow you will return without them having to do the terrifying work of complete honesty. Pride battles love within them every moment, two opposing forces locked in combat for dominance over their actions and choices. And this internal warfare creates a paralysis that keeps them frozen in indecision, while time continues its forward motion and the distance between you grows wider with each passing day. The ego insists that reaching out first means losing, that vulnerability is a position of weakness rather than strength, that admitting they were wrong grants you power over them that they cannot afford to relinquish if they want to maintain the fiction of control they have built their identity upon. But love, true love, soul love, the kind that exists beneath the surface games and defense mechanisms, knows that pride is a poor substitute for connection, that the fortress of ego protection eventually becomes a prison of isolation, that winning the battle of pride means losing the war for genuine relationship. Fear of rejection wars with fear of loss, creating a paralysis born from the understanding that either action, reaching out or remaining silent, carries risk they are not certain they can survive, and in their uncertainty they remain suspended in a liminal space where they have neither you nor the peace that comes from accepting your absence and moving forward. They are at war with themselves, divided against their own deepest desires by the protective mechanisms that were designed to keep them safe from hurt, but now keep them safe from everything, including joy, including love, including the very connection their soul craves above all else. This internal battle exhausts them, drains their energy, creates a constant state of tension that manifests in their body, their sleep patterns, their ability to focus on anything other than the unresolved situation that dominates their consciousness, whether they acknowledge it or not. There will come a moment when pride finally breaks, when the weight of loss becomes greater than the fear of vulnerability, when they understand that the risk of rejection is less terrifying than the certainty of living without you. And in that moment of breaking, the walls will crumble and truth will pour through the cracks like water through a dam that can no longer hold back the pressure building behind it. Watch for the signs that precede the breaking point, the behavioral shifts that indicate the internal battle is nearing its conclusion and action is about to replace paralysis. Because these signs are not random, but follow a pattern that the collective unconscious recognizes even when the individual mind remains unaware of its own trajectory toward inevitable contact. Their digital footprint becomes more visible. They view your stories with a frequency that suggests obsessive checking rather than casual interest. They react to old posts they previously ignored. They appear in the peripheral spaces of your online presence like a ghost that cannot fully materialize, but cannot stay completely hidden either, hovering at the edges of your awareness in a way that feels both intentional and hesitant simultaneously. You will feel sudden rushes of their energy at unexpected moments, intrusive thoughts of them that arrive without warning or logical trigger, dreams where they appear with messages that feel more like transmissions than the random firings of your sleeping mind processing daily experiences. These are not coincidences, but energetic precursors to physical contact, the soul's way of preparing you for what is coming, sending advanced signals through the invisible channels that connect two people whose bond exists beyond the limitations of physical proximity or current relationship status. You may notice synchronicities increasing, their name appearing in unexpected places, songs that remind you of them playing at precisely the moment you were thinking of them, conversations with strangers that seem to circle around themes relevant to your connection, the universe's tendency to amplify what is gaining momentum in the unseen realms before it manifests in visible form. They are gathering courage, rehearsing conversations in their mind, composing and deleting messages they are not yet brave enough to send, hovering over your contact information with their finger hesitating above the call button, experiencing the physical sensations of someone preparing to leap across a chasm they are not certain they can successfully traverse. The energy is building toward a breaking point, toward the moment when silence becomes more painful than vulnerability, when the risk of rejection becomes less terrifying than the certainty of permanent loss, when they finally understand that pride is an expensive luxury they can no longer afford if they want any chance of reclaiming what they carelessly let slip through their fingers when they had the opportunity to hold it securely. Share this message with someone who is feeling their person's energy shifting, who knows in their bones that contact is coming even though the physical evidence has not yet arrived, because collective witnessing strengthens the energetic transmission that is trying to break through. You hold the power now, not as a weapon to wield in retaliation for past hurts, but as a sacred responsibility to yourself, to your own healing, to the future you are building with every choice you make in this present moment. And this power demands that you prioritize your peace above all else, above the seductive pull of nostalgia, above the temptation to accept crumbs because you remember the feast that once existed, above the hope that their eventual return will validate the waiting you endured when they were absent. You do not owe them your waiting. This is the truth the universe is asking you to integrate into your bones, into your decision-making, into the way you evaluate what you are willing to accept, and what you are finally ready to release into the currents of the past, where it belongs if it cannot serve your highest good in the present. Your peace is the priority, not the continuation of a connection that costs you more than it provides, not the fantasy of what could be if on. Lie they would change, not the potential you see in them that they have not yet been able to actualize in a way that translates to genuine partnership. Whether they return or not, you have already won, because you reclaimed yourself, you remembered your value, you stopped diminishing your light to make their darkness more comfortable. You chose yourself when choosing yourself felt impossible, because the habit of choosing them had become so deeply ingrained it felt like identity rather than pattern. This is the paradox that transforms victims into empowered creators of their own reality. That the moment you genuinely stop needing the outcome to unfold in a specific way is the moment you become free regardless of what actually unfolds. That true power lies not in controlling external circumstances, but in maintaining your center regardless of how those circumstances shift and change around you. The universe is asking you to hold this truth, that you are complete without them, that your wholeness does not depend on their recognition of your value, that love, when it is meant for you, will not require you to abandon yourself in order to maintain it, will not ask you to wait indefinitely while someone decides if you are worth the risk of vulnerability. This story is reaching its climax, the point where all the energy that has been building beneath the surface must finally burst through into visible manifestation, where the tension between what is and what could be must resolve itself one way or another, because the universe does not sustain indefinite suspension, and sooner rather than later every situation reaches its natural conclusion. Either they come back honest, not with half-truths or temporary promises born from the panic of loss, but with genuine readiness to meet you in the space of authentic partnership, with real commitment to do the internal work that allows them to show up as the person you deserve rather than the person they have been, or you close the door at peace, knowing you gave what you could give, waited as long as was healthy to wait, and ultimately chose your own well-being over the potential of a connection that could not actualize itself in a way that honored both people equally. Both outcomes are victories for you because both represent alignment with truth rather than continued residence in the painful limbo of uncertainty and hope deferred indefinitely. The universe is aligning you with what you truly deserve, and what you deserve is not determined by what you have been willing to accept, but by what you are finally ready to require, not by the limitations others placed on their capacity to love you, but by the expansiveness of love that exists when two people both show up willing to risk the vulnerability that genuine intimacy demands. Trust that what is meant for you will not require you to betray yourself to keep it, that the right person will not make you choose between your peace and their presence, that love, when it is aligned with your highest good, will feel like coming home rather than constant battle. The path forward is becoming clear whether you can see it yet or not, and that path leads to freedom, freedom from waiting, freedom from hope that costs more than it provides, freedom to receive what is ready to meet you in fullness rather than clinging to what can only offer you fractions. Stand in your power, trust your knowing, honor the journey that brought you to this moment of choice, and understand that regardless of what they do or don't do, you are exactly where you need to be.